Chad Ochocinco not being in the Hall of Fame is a crime against football. The Hall of Fame is supposed to celebrate the best players of the respective eras. And there weren't too many receivers during the 2000s that were better than Ocho. Outside of Randy Moss, Torrey Holt, Big T.O., and Marvin Harrison, Ocho was a top 5 receiver during the era of the 2000s. He was arguably the best route runner to ever play wide receiver. He changed the game in a sense where he kind of was the soldier boy of the NFL. He was like social media before social media truly became a big thing. He was fun to watch, and he has good enough numbers that have a legit case of making it to the Hall of Fame. He was a 3-time All-Pro selection, 2-time first-team All-Pro, 1-time second-team All-Pro selection, and he had 6 seasons where he had at least 1,100 receiving yards or more, and he was a top 5 player at his position. The Hall of Fame is supposed to be where the best players of the respective eras end up getting enshrined in immortality. And Chad Ochocinco belongs with a shrine in Canton. This is one of those kinds of receivers where the stats don't always do him justice. If you were to watch Chad Ochocinco play, you would know just how dominant he was during his prime. It's not all about stats when it comes to deciding who gets into the Hall of Fame, because sometimes the stats can be misrepresented. Yes, Chad Ochocinco didn't have the longevity that guys like Larry Fitzgerald and Steve Smith had, but when he was in his prime, he was better than those two guys. I would take a prime Ocho over Steve Smith any day of the week. Eli Manning, his sole reason for being in the Hall of Fame one day is because he beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl twice. That's it. There's more than one way to become a Hall of Famer outside of just having these great stats. Can you tell the story of the NFL during the 2000s without Chad Ochocinco? No, you can't. When you think of the best receivers from that era, Chad Ochocinco is going to come to the forefront of your brain. And that's what a Hall of Fame player is to me. It's not about how many great numbers did you have, how many Super Bowl rings did you have. Who cares about rings as a wide receiver? Rings are more so something that you define a quarterback's Hall of Fame candidacy on, because they have the largest impact on wins and postseason success. If you would have stuck Chad Ochocinco in his prime on the New England Patriots, he definitely would have been a surefire Hall of Famer, because more people would have been watching him. Nobody was really watching the Cincinnati Bengals like that other for Chad Ochocinco. And he is the Cincinnati Bengals all-time record holder in receptions, yards, touchdowns. Not only is he one of the best Bengals players ever, but from a skill set standpoint, there's no better route runner that has played this position than Ocho. He definitely has a fair claim to being a Hall of Famer just because of the impact that he had on this game during his time. Yeah, there are guys that aren't in the Hall of Fame yet that definitely should get in before him. I'm not saying that Chad Ochocinco should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But what I am saying is that at some point, he should be in the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is supposed to celebrate greats. It's supposed to celebrate guys who defined their era. And nobody defined the wide receiver position during the 2000s better than what Chad Ochocinco did. That is his claim to being in the Hall of Fame. You don't always have to have a 15-year career playing way into your prime or way past your prime to be a Hall of Famer. Luke Kuechly's going to the Hall of Fame, and he didn't play as long as some of the other linebackers that are in over him. But when he was on the field in his peak, he was arguably the best linebacker ever. Patrick Willis is going to be a Hall of Famer. His career didn't last that long. Chad Ochocinco had a pretty lengthy prime. He had 6-7 years that he played elite football, where he was a top 3, top 5 player at his position. And in some years, like in 2006, when he led the NFL in receiving yards, you could have made the claim that he was the best receiver in the league at that time. There's a reason why he was a first-team All-Pro selection twice. He's the only receiver since Jerry Rice to lead his conference in receiving yards for 4 consecutive seasons. When Chad Ochocinco was playing, he was a dog, and I don't think enough people really understand how truly good Ocho was. Because, you know, of the off-the-field stuff that he got into, listen, Lawrence Taylor is a registered sex offender. You feel me? O.J. Simpson killed somebody, and he's still in the Hall of Fame. And let's not act like the football field is some moral high ground where you find all of the best characters. There are guys who have did far more worse than what Chad Ochocinco has done off the field. Terrell Owens, it took him hella long to get into the Hall of Fame, but eventually he got in. I'm judging Ocho based off what he was as a football player and what he was during his peak from 2000 to 2008, 2009 was a top 5 receiver every single season. That belongs in the Hall of Fame. You cannot talk about the NFL from the era of the 2000s when it comes to wide receivers, leaving out Chad Ochocinco. That's why he should be in the Hall of Fame. He's not one of those Hall of very good players. Listen, Julian Edelman was a great player for the New England Patriots, but he's not a Hall of Famer. He never was a Pro Bowler. He never was a All-Pro selection. Chad Ochocinco was. He had better numbers than Michael Irvin. Yes, it was 2 different eras, but they weren't too different. The NFL was still pretty run-heavy when Chad Ochocinco was playing. Chad Ochocinco should be in Canton. And it's just an absolute travesty that we have to deal with all of these politics that's keeping him out of it. He shouldn't have to make his own Hall of Fame jacket. He should be given one because he deserves to have one. He deserves to have a shrine in Canton. A guy like Chad Ochocinco that produced multiple 1,100 plus receiving seasons, that also was always one of the top at his positions every single year in his prime, should have a shrine and immortality in Canton.